sort of traditional American university, as traditional as we might be able to get in terms of American education. How do we start to think about educating for this kind of new platform?
My personal view, as a dean of a faculty, by the way, is that we should try to design new types of curricula, which are crossing over disciplines like cultural economics and policy on one side, humanities on the other side, social and cognitive psychology on the other side. This creative mix, if properly designed, I think could create a range of skills that are needed to educate people able to tackle this kind of challenges, knowing that of course you cannot have generalists. You also need specializations, but I mean a specialization that draw from this very diverse range of competencies. So in the first place, we have to redefine the boundaries, so to speak. And the redefining boundaries sometimes is useful. Think of how badly the humanities are seen today as a promising professional platforms for people. There's the tendency to think that the humanities are weak from the point of view of occupational potential. Then you can make a wonderful career from there, but practically everybody thinks that there are better platforms to start from and more promising. What I'm saying is that if properly reworked, the humanities could become a wonderful professional platform to create space and possibility on this kind of markets and more general on this kind of professional profiles. And it's even worse that so far the connection between the explosion of culture and creative production issues and the humanities has not been made at the academic level. I think it's time to fill this gap, because this is absolutely a lost opportunity.
And in terms of people who are, or young people who are graduating and looking for opportunities in this, what's sort of some of the future of this field? What's the possibility for innovation and for inclusion and for participation?
I think that they are huge. If I was graduating now, well, it's a biased advice, but if I was graduating now, I would no doubt try to explore this field. And if there were no curriculum doing this, I would try to make up my own menu by taking it from where it is, because I think that this makes a difference. And learning foreign languages, this is important. If you go work on a specific context, you cannot do it, if not diving into the local cultural, cognitive, social environment, and this means that language is very important. It's not simply a means of communicating, it's a means of trying to understand the mindset of other people, of other cultures. And so I think that also the availability to be open to learning new languages in this particular context is absolutely important.
And going back to something you said earlier was the sort of crossover between cultural producers and cultural users. And I think a lot of people sort of see a red light when they hear that, in the sense of you want to protect intellectual property. We think about, as you mentioned, everything that's been circulating on YouTube, and that a lot of it's not great cultural production. So in terms of how do you negotiate that? How do you make it valuable and not just sort of additional volume to a huge field?
Well, I think that, there's, by the way, it's not a new phenomenon. There is a famous science fiction writer, Theodore Sturgeon, that says that 90% of everything is scrap. And I mean, the Sturgeon law, has been devised many years ago. This means that basically there's always been this kind of problem. But still, today I think we should not be scared of the volume of content that is being produced, because in some sense this is simply a reflex of the fact that our production possibilities are exploding from a cultural point of view. I think that, by the way, of course there are things that are outright silly, and not even the people who actually did them appreciate them. But this is another thing. But what's interesting is that also there are a lot of things that are big at the beginning seem silly, but they are not. Generally, cultural disturbances, the real cultural innovations, when they emerge, they very often seem absolutely awkward and not particularly interesting. We have to remember that, for example, Impressionism is a denigratory terminology that was coined by one of the first reviewers of an impressionist exhibition, because they said, look, these people, how dumb they are not even able to put it in focus. And I mean, this is what happens all the time. Most often, the places that we would never suspect become the real cradles of radical cultural innovation. Think of punk. When you saw those first punk people, they would say, okay, these people are hopeless freaks, and I mean, what they are doing, I mean, that's nothing to do with serious or even sensible culture. And look at that now. I mean, punk has been one of the real cornerstones of the edification of contemporary culture, just to make an example. So you never know. You never know where change and quality comes from on one side. On the other side, what we can do, and this is the object of policy we can work on, we can expand the potential of people. So the point is, the more people invest on their cognitive abilities to penetrate cultural contents that they are not familiar with, and to develop skills and abilities that made them in the position of expanding their expressive possibilities, that's important. Then what you do with this, well, it's up to you, and but the real capital, the real intangible infrastructure that we need to construct a full-fledged cultural economy is to expand the capacity of people, and this is what we really have to care for. The other things, fortunately, are outside our control.
Do you think there's a danger in trying to implement, in trying to use arts and trying to use culture and use them as strategic policies?
Well, this is a subtle and important question, because of course the real threat is instrumentalization. You can instrumentalize culture very easily. You can just pretend that basically culture is important only insofar it generates turnover, or only insofar it makes people happier. And this is simply silly. I think that the real issue is enabling people to understand that culture is something that has its own reason, and it needs no further justification in itself. The more people are able to appreciate the value of culture in their lives without further instrumental concerns, the more, paradoxically, culture has an impact, politically, economically, socially, and so on. But the more you want to be instrumental, the more you want to obtain this kind of effect, the less culture becomes credible in this respect. Because culture is about sense making, and sense making is powerful when it's about sense. When it's about something else, it's a clearly manufactured sense. People understand and they don't give it value. I mean, it's all natural. If I'm telling you something because I want to convince you, or if I'm telling you something because I feel this, I mean, it makes an enormous difference in terms of value what I'm saying. And people, fortunately, are socially well trained by thousands of years of social practice to understand when people are cheating or when they are not.